Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we have a date. Jared Isaacman goes before the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee next week. 4 astronauts are flying in a first ever polar orbit, a mission called the Fram 2, and there's a story behind that. Adventura Private Wealth, whom I've never heard of, closed their first fund, and guess where they plan to spend it? Everybody seems to want their own constellation these days. And a proposed EU Space Act may have regulatory ramifications for anyone who flies over their territory. This and more coming up. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. Hello, everyone. As usual, we are hosted by the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. And what is that? This is an organization that champions and strengthens emerging space startups, space scalable SMBs, and space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy across the funding spectrum. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at varying levels of development. And one of our latest initiatives, as you know, is our monthly space microgrants, where we award $1,000 to an aspiring startup. And you can go to spacemicrofund.com if you want to apply. The form is right there. It's very easy to submit. We also encourage our listeners and fans to help support microgrants. Near the bottom of that same page is a link button to our support portal, where you get the option of a one-time gift or a monthly subscription. Say, $50 to $100 a month for 6 months or more helps a lot of new firms get out of the garage. Joining me now is one of my podcast producers, entrepreneur, one of my oldest space friends, Michael Lane from Liftport. Michael, come on in, man.
Hey.
And there he is.
How's
How you doing? I know you're a little bit late because you were taking care of your mom or something. I know you were running around, so you're just getting settled.
Yeah, everything's all good. Mom's fine.
Good.
Yeah, I would just want to point out, I left the Space Microgrant screen up for a little bit longer. The month of March just closed out. We reviewed the applications. There's some really cool stuff in there, but I just want to encourage everybody that it's time to do another one. So if you didn't win in March, feel free. We haven't announced it yet, by the way. Right. We have not announced it yet. If you haven't won, feel free to submit again. And also, we're always looking to fill up the coffers so that we can give this money out. So if that's something within your means, please consider making a contribution here. But it was really cool reading the applications that came in, and we'll be announcing the winner pretty soon.
I'm hoping we can do that before the weekend is out, because I would just love, if we can, to have the winner on our next Thursday show on the 7th of April. So for at least a few minutes, just we want to introduce these people to the world as quickly as we can. And so that might be a good night to do it. I hope we can always bounce it forward to the following Monday, depending on the schedule. But Isaacman, he's on April 9th, they're saying now.
All right. What do you want to say about Mr. Isaac?
Well,
big news?
Well, what can I say at this point? He's he's been preparing for this moment for quite a while now, since he was first tapped to do this job. While there were lots of points of contention amongst the chatterati, as I like to call them, he's still set up for the confirmation hearing. And it looks as though, since this is not the Intelligence Committee, this is not the Military Committee, this is a combination of, transportation and science and commerce. And so this may not be as big an ordeal as a lot of the other confirmation hearings have been. Ted Cruz is in charge of that committee, and I think he's got the backing of at least every Republican on there. They're going to want to, I think they're going to want to confirm quickly if they can. So this may only take a day or two, and then boom, he's in. And that would be, regardless of how you feel about him, that would be just a great breath for all of us. We just let out our breath now and say, okay, we have a rudder at long last, and now we're going to see where that rudder takes us. And that's
move on to the next thing, right? Like
thing.
It doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing. We talked about it last week, 2 weeks. Yeah, we talked about it last week. A letter came out with something like 30 or 40 astronauts, retired astronauts. A
handful of whom I actually recognize.
Yeah. And as we pointed out last week, it's a purple list. It's a purple list. And I think that's the thing that makes it the easiest to go through the confirmation process. He is a somewhat known entity in the industry, and the folks, I refer to the space sector, all the actors in the space sector, as ACDC, academic, civil, defense, and commercial. And space used to be dominated by civil and defense. Academic was always kind of in the background. And then the commercial sector was non-existent.
That's where a lot of the science came from, was the academic sector. They were just, all they did was lobby to fly their science payloads on a NASA rocket or up to ISS. And so not a lot of commercial there.
Yeah. But then in the last 10 years, the commercial sector has done so well that we have a voice now. We have weight in this industry. So I think he definitely has the support of all the commercial people that I know. I can only think of one person that voiced kind of even a lukewarm negative response. So and even that wasn't a strong response. It was just a lukewarm, like, let's wait and see. So us fanboys are excited.
I'm in wait and see mode, definitely, because with all the other stuff, like with Doge and everything, they're always putting out all these horrifying, this is what's going to happen. NASA's going to be destroyed if he gets in. And I don't believe that. I don't believe it for a second. I'm waiting to see what this guy has to say, and I'm really looking forward to the next adventure moving forward.
Well, I do not know what he's going to do with SLS, Gateway, Orion. Like, so there are people that should be really worried.
Oh, I know. I want to hand him a little drawing of a wrecking ball. Here you go. Your wrecking ball, sir. Here you are. Thank you for supporting America. Next thing, I just want to, we got to go through a couple of things really quickly, because we're just not going to go through it all. But we want to get our guest on here. Our guest is amazing, and we want to get him on here tonight. There are some private astronauts in orbit right now, and it's the first full crew that's actually doing a polar orbit, which is kind of interesting. I didn't realize no manned crew has ever done a polar orbit before, but there you are. And there's a story behind it. There's a story behind it that I wanted to mention. I don't know what you know about history from polar exploration, but they call this mission the Fram 2. And that's for a reason. It's not an acronym. The Fram was a very famous polar exploration ship over 100 years ago that actually it was built by a guy named Nansen, and he and his cohorts, including a guy named Roald Amundsen, did a lot of exploration work in the North Polar region. Well, later on in 1909, 1910 period, Amundsen actually borrowed the Fram from Nansen to do some more work in the North. But what happened instead was he turned around and went the other way, and he took the South Pole. So the Fram is the only ship ever built that has been to both polar regions.
Oh, that's
and this is why they're calling it the Fram 2. You know, they're every 45 minutes they're seeing a pole. And I thought, yeah, Amundsen only made half an orbit, and it took him years. So this is a lot better, I guess. And it's not so cold.
Nice.
I thought that was just a fun little thing. They're going to be doing experiments. They're going to be doing other stuff. But I'll bet for that particular, the view has got to be tremendous. If you're a polar exploration junkie of history like I am, to be able to see something like that, be, oh God, I want to be there. It's great.
Yeah.
You know,
45 minutes from one end of the earth to the other.
That really brings it home.
It's different. I mean,
yeah, the usual equatorial orbit. Yeah, we see it so much. It doesn't sink in the way something like that does.
Yeah, it's kind of what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, where the industry has changed, and we're taking for granted reusable rocketry in 9 days.
Yeah,
but we're also kind of used to the ISS circling the world 16 times a day and seeing those amazing images and the video of the aurora from space. Like, we've been doing that for a decade now, and it's astounding when you first see it. But now it's like, okay, what do you got for me lately? And that reaches a topic that we should be a topic for another show, probably. But what is going to happen when the ISS is ultimately sunset? And because we remember the shuttle, we had that much problem. We sunset the shuttle, and it was almost a decade before an American-built spaceship flew again with people in it. And do we want that kind of a problem with ISS? If they're going to splash ISS, something better be ready to replace it, and damn quick. And that should be a topic of a whole show. Right. We should kind of pencil that down. For sure. Yep. So our producer just sent me this video. I don't know what it is, so I'm watching it kind of on the. This is us going out and looking.
Perfect time. Open up to Antarctica.
Yes. 120 degrees east.
Be very careful with the snow features there.
That is so funny.
That is great. All right.
Antarctica
it's a 6-minute video, so I'm not going to watch the whole. What's that?
And Antarctica's still there. It's not all melted yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Probably not ever. That's another conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. Yeah, so that was great. Thanks to Sean, our producer, for finding that. I hadn't seen that before.
Next thing, there's an outfit. I'd never heard of these people before. It was called Aventura Private Wealth. They closed their first fund, and it wasn't a whole bunch. It's like $9.5 million, but they'll humble beginnings. Our buddies over there at other companies we know, they also started with small funds like that, and they're growing rapidly. So I mentioned they will too. But I thought it was just interesting. They launched their first fund, $9.5 million, and what they're doing is basically it's stuff that's going to give SpaceX more business. It was building payloads for SpaceX, and they mentioned that specifically. Here we go again. It's like SpaceX just gets more attention and more money, and out of the blue, it says, "Oh, here's another, $9.5 million to do this."
Here's another $10 million. Added up, and pretty soon it's real money.
Yep.
Folks may not know this, but SpaceX is doing kind of the same thing that Zuckerberg did with Facebook. He has SpaceX has so many private investors, small private investors, because all the employees got equity. They're all captive. They're not seeing the wealth return back because they haven't. That stock is private and locked up. there was a point when Zuckerberg was forced, and I mean forced by the Securities and Exchange Commission, to go public because he had 5,000 individual investors, and at that point you are automatically a de facto publicly traded company.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how many investors are out in the wild with SpaceX, but they've been trading on the private markets for years and years. People have sold little batches of equity here and there. So this is actually kind of interesting to me, that maybe this is a way to buy up the little batches of equity to keep that 5,000 number as far away as possible. Yeah. So I read this from a different perspective than you did. I think it's interesting regardless. But
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
Something real, just two quick blurbs, and I want to get into a bigger thing that I know you want to talk about because you sent this to me this week. I just thought everyone seems to be getting into the Starlink rivalry now. I saw two articles right next to each other. A company called Seizing of Astro joined a Taiwan initiative to build a LEO satellite network. Well, there you go. Mm-hmm. And right back to that was Amazon is also launching a first batch of Starlink rival satellites. Constellations are just the flavor of the month everywhere you go in the world now. And so I had this nightmare where we somehow managed to go out and clean up all the space junk there is in orbit, but the orbits will be so filled with constellation satellites, we still have problems launching past them.
Yeah, there was a thing a while ago about what if we just built a fence around the world, right? Just an entire, like, if Leo gets, because there's talk about, I've said this before, when I started in this industry, there were only 400 satellites in the sky ever had been built. Yep. So 400 had been built. They were not all flying. And now
there are thousands.
Thousands. There's nearly 11,000 satellites.
And about half of them belong to SpaceX.
More than half, 7,000. More than 7,000 belong to. And it's like, at some level, if Starlink gets fully built, if Kuiper gets fully built, if OneWeb gets fully built, this one, I don't know how many this is. China is trying to build a complementary, competitive system in the same numbers. You're talking about 50,000, 100,000 satellites.
And then can you
40,000?
Can you imagine people sitting around a desk then years later, seeing all that and looking at that graphic and going, "There's got to be a better way to do this. It's too crowded." My granddaddy never had this problem, in 1972.
I wonder if we go back to the world that Arthur C. Clarke originally imagined, because he's the inventor of geosynchronous satellites. What if we just had 3 of them in the right spot that covered the world? That covered the world's communication requirements. Well, I don't see that happening. But
it's the latency problem.
Latency, I know.
People want everything right, and they want it right now. So that's the issue with that. That's what caused all this madness.
In the same way that some of the planets have rings, our producer is saying we're gonna have rings of Earth. The rings of Earth are going to be different from the rings of Saturn, but
that'll make us stand out, and maybe other civilizations will find us faster.
Right?
They'll see that and go, those guys look interesting.
Those guys look like they know what they're doing.
At least
at least early level.
Nice. Okay. Last thing before we get to our guest, you brought this up. They're writing a big law, lots of laws in the EU. It's the Space Act that's basically establishing all sorts of like regulations that they want the rest of the world to follow, apparently, if you're going to fly satellites and other spacecraft over their territory. And so it doesn't just apply to launch companies and service providers in the EU. Some of these things apply for everyone. And you brought this up, so rant to me about it. This is your time.
I don't have a lot to rant about this. I just think it's interesting because I thought this rule was established at the end of the 60s and then reestablished during the Iridium days. But the idea that you can regulate something above your country, I thought that was well and done finished law. The SR-71 tested some of that back with the Blackbird flying over other countries. Sputnik originally started making people ask questions about it. So I don't really understand how the EU thinks they have a legal leg to stand on. So I'm perplexed by this. Rather than a rant, I wonder why they think they have the power to do this at all.
Well, it does.
So,
according to this thing in the middle, they say why it matters. They're saying that it's going to accelerate a shift in the direction of the global conversation at long last about how to best protect the sustainability of the domain and manage space traffic. So apparently, for a couple of decades, the discussion was dominated with initiatives that focused on voluntary non-binding standards, guidelines, best practices, blah, 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 blah. And like the failed International Code of Conduct and the UN guidelines, they're just kind of just out there, but it's not hard coded and people aren't, signing on to it. And so now, of course, there's the fear that any kind of binding regulation is going to crush emerging innovative space companies and drive them offshore. But it's still going to hurt established companies who simply want to overfly EU territory.
Right. Europe doesn't have to worry too much about crushing innovation. They've already done that to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Right. They don't have the thriving ecosystem that we have. But yeah, it does. It brings into question, who gets to fly where and when. I don't see that they have the right to do that, but I'm curious where this goes. I'm surprised about this more than anything else. The lawyers are going to do fine. The rocket companies maybe not, but the lawyers are going to be all right.
That is true. That is very, very true. Oh God. We have got a great rest of our show this evening. We have a great, very, very interesting guest. I got the story from our producer about how we met him and what he's doing. He's probably the most interesting new space type entrepreneur that you probably never heard of, and yet these guys are all over the place. They are basically on a couple different continents. They're based in Asia. They started there. They're also based here in the U.S. We're going to be meeting. We are meeting the chair and CEO today. Is named Kuang-Han K of Gran Systems, a space tech firm with footprints both in Asia and the U.S., providing a plethora of products and services across multiple verticals, including brokering launch services, ISS experiment packages, custom design and manufacturing, engineering design, CubeSat structures and deployment, and multiple other solutions for space exploration and research. They've developed solutions for the healthcare industry, and they're very involved in space education initiatives, especially in Asia. This gentleman has 3 IPOs under his belt. He founded his own company, and then 4 other companies right afterward, invested in 16 other companies. But now he's circled back to his one true love. His focus is Gran Systems in mostly the new space arena. Kuang-Han, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Mike. for
Oh,
having us
this is
here.
just, you have an amazing story. I wish you just, maybe we just lead off with explaining a little about how all this got started, how you got into this and where it went.
Yes, I learned space in college and grad school, but right out of graduate school, I was out looking for a job, and I could not find any job for a long time. And I ended up going to semiconductor industry, which was not what I was expecting. But I stayed there for 16 years, and then going through all different roles and responsibilities from Fortune 150 companies in the US to government role in Taiwan, then back to uh, Semiconductor Global Industry Association, academia, research institute, and back to the industry, being management in IPO company, and then going up the rank. And then I found out that I was um, in management uh, reorganization. So I founded my own company. And at that time, it was 2007, at the end of 2007, and I started thinking about founding my own company in 2008,
Okay.
right in the middle of the
Right.
the
That's a hard time to start the company.
you know, it's hard to describe it, but it took me 9 months to try to figure out how to, instead of being a ranked executive, and become an owner of a company. So that took me some time, and it was actually a good time for me because I got out of the executive right before right at the beginning of 2008. So I wasn't being responsible for the crash in 2008,
Right.
and I spent the whole year in 2008 trying to figure out what I'm going to do while the market was crashing. So I hand in the company registration form at the Ministry of Economic Affairs in September and October of 2008. So there were about 15, 20 of officers getting ready to take the company registration forms, and there was nobody in the lobby. So they all turned their head that day and said, "Who in the world came into the office to file for a company?" While about 5,000 companies were folding every month at that time.
Yeah.
And so there were about 30,000 companies folding in 2008, and I was trying to found a company right then. And then it took us a long time to try to figure out, starting from semiconductor, uh, trying to figure out what to do, and gradually I found my way back to what I studied in the graduate school. So I entered into the new space industry.
Well, at this, yeah,
So
you're all over the place now. That's why I found it so interesting about you. I go through your website. Before I even did that, we had that conversation ahead of time. And my God, just on the services side of your site, you talk about satellite. You're brokering satellite launches. You're brokering flying space experiments. You do your own custom design and manufacturing for people, system integration. You even have something called a think tank, which I think is interesting. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. And you're very involved in space education, and that's just on the services side. I haven't even gotten into products and solutions yet. My God, how do you do it all?
I don't know. That's a good question. uh, so because when I started the company and trying to figure out what to do, and in 2008 I went to Stanford, my alma mater, and they were in the dungeon. They were showing this something like this. One
Oh,
U.
yeah. Well, 1D CubeSat. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was able to hold it just like this, and I took a photo just like this. And I thought, oh, I can do this. And they called this a satellite.
Right.
So
What
that was a realization
what
that
year was that?
instead of
2008?
2008,
Wow, that was really early in the CubeSat days. So for the folks that don't know, the CubeSat standard's only about 25 years. It was invented in California, Professor Twiggs, and I can't remember the other person's name. Who is it?
Jordy,
Jordy. Yep. And so that standard was not a standard in the beginning, right? We now know that it has revolutionized the whole industry, but back in 2008, it wasn't well known. It wasn't well understood. So that's pretty remarkable. Yeah.
yes, I saw that. I thought satellites were huge and complicated, and
Right.
it's nowhere to touch. Then when I saw this, I thought even I can do it. And coming from the semiconductor industry, to me, it's natural. And then I started to jump in. But however, being away from space for a long time, I took the first 3 years trying to sink in from first seeing the CubeSat to actually realize that I need to come back and relearn space.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first 3 years was realization of what to do. The next 3 years was relearning the technology from semiconductor to space. Then the next 3 years, I decided that I need to go around the world trying to figure out what the industry is. So that's 9 years until I first landed my first space mission. And then the next 4 years, I was implementing the mission. And in 2022, we launched the CubeSat.
Okay. And I
So
assume you're still making CubeSats today to order for customers.
yes, I
You're
have
still
a
making
few.
those.
I have a few
Just
here.
yeah, out of curiosity, I was just wondering, did you somewhere along that process, because that process wasn't available in 2008, did you make the switch to 3D printing?
Because my former uh, experiences included running large factories for IPO companies.
Sure.
And so we had manufacturing lines for semiconductor equipment industry. We had a manufacturing line for medical devices. We had another semiconductor equipment production for holding all the wafers. So, and in the past government role, I was in charge of precision machinery, machine tool industry, and also semiconductor equipment industry. So I'm very well versed in factories. So I visited more than 700 factories around the world, and try to help them troubleshoot during the Asia economic crisis. So all those experience added up. It's not too much of an issue getting my own factory running.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's amazing because again, this I look at your site again. Now I talked about the services, and you make also a whole bunch of products. You make CubeSat deployer, a CubeSat bus, other CubeSat structures, things I've never heard of. What's a Helmholtz coil? I don't know what that is. Plasma vacuum systems, I know, thermal vacuum chambers. And you've also got all this stuff that you're making. How did you get from there to here? I mean, you had to start with like one thing and then start building it out into all these other service areas. What did that take? That must have been
Years.
a long road. Yes. I love this.
So, so first, you see, many people started doing entrepreneurship very fast, but we started very slow.
Okay.
So it took us 9 years before we started doing anything. By then, the realization of what to do is very clear, and the possibility of what to do is also very clear. So starting from the ninth year, we started just hitting one product after another because we have thought about it for 9 years beforehand.
Okay. So your growth curve was something kind of like that. It's kind of
Yeah.
a
So what people see us right now is how do you get all the product out so quickly these days? But the first 9 years we had nothing.
okay.
Right.
All right.
Right. I'm guessing you were a job shop in the beginning where you were working for other companies and building their systems while you designed your own, something like that. Yeah. Okay.
In the first portion of the company, we didn't even have a factory,
Oh,
and
how did,
until we were able to suddenly accumulate enough resources to have factories. And then, of course, throughout the period, by investing into 16 different companies, at different time, the return were injected into Gran systems
gotcha.
for us to purchase equipment and even merge a factory in order to accelerate the process.
Okay.
What kind of companies were you investing in and why did you choose them?
So because we started in semiconductor industry,
Mhm.
so where the manufacturing criticality is very profound, very fine, and very tiny, and everything needs to be precise and with high quality. So with that practice, uh, first in the first in the semiconductor industry, we were used to, uh, for example, in the old days, we were corporate member of the U.S. Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award.
Okay.
And then in the later IPO, we were also corporate members of uh, SME's Taiwan's National Quality Award. So with all these heritage, we um, practice to do good products, and in order to be able to ramp up and scale up into quality products to service to the industry.
Pardon me.
So that was our heritage.
Okay. Okay. One of our viewers came in with a question. He wants to know what your customer base looks like. Is it more in Asia, or more in the U.S., or evenly split? Or I mean, what kind of customers do you have?
So 5 years ago, we were more Asia centric in terms of customer base. And throughout the 16 years, we go through different cycles and different transitions. We started doing our first customer actually in 2009 was in water filtration. Because at that time I was doing semiconductor, but 2008, 2009 was very difficult to get business. So I transitioned to something. At that time, the disk drive industry wanted to find a ways to clean disk drives, and so we help them get the water filtration to clean the disk drives. And right now the disk drive industry are not even here, and transition into SD cards and SRAMs, flash RAMs. And so technology shift has been very rapid. So we are used to transition from one kind of equipment into another kind of equipment, and then gradually through my learning process, I enter into the space industry and find standardization. And we found CubeSat being very good standards. And we jump into the standardization and started making from one mission in 2022, starting in 2018. But after 2022, from one missions, we made more than 150 CubeSat sets of products, and to service many universities, some commercial customers, and a few international space agencies.
Okay.
So with that, we only sold half of them, which is about we serve 50 missions, and about 70 of these that we make. And because in the old days, everybody has these normal anodization
Right.
with the mill standard. And since we are professional manufacturers with access to Apple cell phone product lines, so we try to make different colors. So we are called the Colorful CubeSat Company.
Michael, have you ever seen someone pivot as well as this man?
No, I was just
It's
thinking.
amazing. Well, this is not selling. I'll do this. This is
Right.
not doing so well. I'll sell this.
Right.
I'll go over here. I'll sell over there. It's almost like I knew a guy once years ago, and he was a salesman. He just said he was a salesman, right?
Yep.
I said, well, what do you sell? He said, well, what do you want to buy?
Right. Yeah.
I sell it to you. It's like, it's that kind of attitude. It's just refreshing to see.
One thing, Tom, you always talk about space scalable as an idea that you build something on the ground here for Earth, a product and a service for here for Earth, and then that gets you to orbit. If you sell enough things on the ground, you can get to orbit. And he's the first I know of that's actually done that. So that I find that pretty inspiring. So I think that's really neat.
I do have an interesting question. I wanted to bring this up while we have time because it might lead to an interesting discussion. We mentioned this a little bit, or when we chatted earlier, a couple of days ago. I looked at everything you were doing, and it just seemed like you were a one-stop shop for just about anything someone would want to do to get something into orbit or to build something that, a probe or whatever you want. And you said, no, I am only a half-stop shop. And I'd love to hear explanation of that and what that means. I'm fascinated.
Well, you see, with the CubeSat, we sometimes don't provide everything, and some people only want half of it, and they want to build the other half. But then people come into all different kinds of issues, including you were discussing earlier. The Europeans were having some new regulations, and the previous regulation was discussing about zero debris, and also FCC has this FCC end of life
Here,
5-year rule, and so we understand that and try to being in the semiconductor industry and the massive traditional machinery industry, and we in the past we have consumed so much material and resources, and we are conscious of not wasting more materials. So the zero debris concept really sets deep in our heart, and we try to figure something out. And we found some solutions that from the industry that they were not able to scale up. And we are the huge factory, so we participated into making systems for people, and then uh, they they want something, so we do something, and sometimes we cannot do everything, so we are half-stop shop. And then here we have also created and integrated the the orbit drive device to satisfy the FCC end of life 5-year rule to have all the satellite deorbit, because we are one of the manufacturer that has the quantity more than 100 sets. So it makes sense for us to integrate these kind of systems. So sometimes we found people who develop new ideas and new hardwares, and they wanted a vehicle to carry their product with enough quantity to make enough impact to the industry, and so we followed that and offered the solutions for them to the industry. So sometimes we found what we can do well, and with the precision and with the solution that we can offer to the industry, and we help out. And just for things that we are not good at, and we leave it to the customer to do. So we are half stop shop.
What would be the things that you're not good at? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just want to like divide the world. Like where does that half start and stop?
So we are good at the mechanical. We are good at mission critical subsystems. We are good at thermal, and so we are also integrating the solar panel
Good.
and power and battery, and except we are not good at communication. And pointing like ADCS, we are deciding whether we want to jump in. So besides pointing and besides communication, we can build half of
I
a
almost
CubeSat.
think that's 3/4 of a CubeSat. So just giving yourself some credit. But you're right. The communications and pointing side is hard. So you've delivered 150 CubeSats.
We built 150 and we deliver
Okay, all
70.
right. So you delivered 70.
So we have 80. We have 80 in stock for people wanting to order. We can sometime deliver right away.
That's honestly, considering supply chain issues in the last 5 years, that's something I would tell other people. Like that's something people want to know. That
you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. I was curious. I mean, this show is really about the intersection between money and space. Are you making other investments? Are you thinking about another IPO? Where do you go from here, given your expertise and client list?
We were going to be more actually before we used to be angel investor. However, if you remember the Silicon Valley
Yeah.
Bank
Silicon Valley Bank. Yep.
crisis, and that kind of kill our angel investment portion because we got hit as an angel
Okay.
investor. So we slow down on the angel investment portion and focus in the system integration and also the think tank portion. So right now, instead of the 3 items, we focus on the 2 items. And currently, we are not investing outwards, and however, focus on investing inward. And last year and this year hasn't been easy for us. So the main thing is to focus on our own operation, and so right now what we are focusing is completing the product line portfolio from 1U to 16U and covering every single node in between. So it's basically solidifying our product line portfolio to offer to the industry. So that it has been after going through so long of development, we are very focused in first having a basic product portfolio, and then we will grow into space economy and space sustainability solutions, and also we are good at semiconductors, so we will jump into the space manufacturing. So space economy, space sustainability, and space manufacturing.
So the space manufacturing we really haven't talked about. Your website clearly has folks on the moon. Is that an area that you want to get into? Is on orbit manufacturing or lunar manufacturing?
Because we have also won a contract to do a lunar lander payload mission, and we have finished the contract designing the portion of the mission hardware and structure and integration. So by doing that project, we are also attracting some lunar regulars brick making.
Bricks on the moon.
So before we also worked on the lunar rover concept, and so together we might also have a lunar offering, and by accident.
By accident. When does your lunar rover? Is it your own, or are you a component on someone else's system?
We did the concept, but that was 2018.
Okay.
And then we ran out of because we were in Asia, and it's one of the first Asian, I think maybe the first Asian lunar rover. But we don't have any funding at that time.
Right.
And so people look at it and kind of laugh at it. And
no.
if I was in the US, I would get a lot of funding.
I hope that was true. I'm not sure that part's true, because it's really hard.
In
But-
2018, 19, maybe I will get a lot of funding.
Yeah.
And
Just a quick follow-up
before
question.
we were talking about SpaceX, in 2018, we almost became one of the suppliers for SpaceX by having the requirement was that we invest in SpaceX in order to be a supplier.
Ah,
Oh,
So we were that early.
wow.
yeah.
I've not heard that. Go ahead, Tom. What were you going to say?
No, I just had a quick question. I did one thing I don't know is how many people are there at your companies?
I usually answer we have 60 metric tons of equipment.
Okay.
Okay, that wasn't my question, but okay, that's
So the equipments are my employees.
okay.
And at one point we have 15 people. Right now we are able to run it with 6 people.
Okay.
Wow.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
All
So
right.
a lot more efficient.
Yeah. Lean,
And-
mean, and productive.
We actually produce more with 6 people than when we had 15.
Because of the high efficiency production systems, the robotics, the assembly line. That makes sense. So your 80 satellites, they're ready to deploy now. You can configure them in a bunch of different ways. Who do you think your customer is for those 80 satellites? The buses.
Yes, because we do everything standard. So every single node we have at least 20 units made. So
Okay.
we can, and for example, in the 2U we have made more than 40.
Okay.
So everything are the same, and we do in like semiconductor equipment quality. So we can try to do mean time between failure analysis with more quantity.
Okay.
So and right now we have it in stock so that they can be ready to order, so that it's just in time. And right now about half of the market is for universities.
Okay.
So we cannot charge too high for the universities.
Right.
And they kept us in check with the with the pricing.
Yeah. The universities are not known for lavish spending on production, so I know that one well.
Unlike the Saudis, I get him in touch with them.
Yeah. But they help us with the quantity in order to make it to cover the other way.
Right.
Sure.
How many schools are you working with now? And we're almost at the end of time, so we don't have a lot more time. But how many schools are you working with now?
Maybe about 30 some universities around
Terrific.
the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good base. You can do a lot with that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and increasing.
Increasing,
Good.
yeah.
Good. I love a guy with vision. I love the way your company's growing. You've got a footprint on 2 continents, and I'm just absolutely amazed about you and that you're here. And Kuang-Han K, thank you for joining us this evening. And I hope to catch up with you. Maybe we'll catch up at the Space Symposium next week.
Yes.
In person. I would just love to do that and continue our conversation informally. And you are now a known quantity. You're not an unknown quantity anymore, if we have anything to say about it.
Right on.
Thank you for being here, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
This is terrific.
You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That is just, it's an amazing guy. He's just an amazing guy. I am just, so we probably could have talked for another hour about all sorts of things. I still want to know more about the challenges he faces and where he thinks he's going to go and how he's going to meet them. And he's only got 6 people working for him. He's doing all that.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
I'm just absolutely out of my mind over it. This has been a great show, and we want to do more like this and have more with him coming real soon.
Yeah.
Michael, thanks for joining me today as well. I'm glad you could make it. What else do I have to let me finish here. Now for the future, this coming Monday show, April 7th, I will not be here. Michael will be hosting with his guest, Manuel Antonio Cuba. And I will be at the Space Symposium in Colorado Springs, and the first 2 days are always the roughest. And so I'm going to be a couple of sleepless nights for the first couple of nights of that. There's so much we have to do and so many people we have to talk to. It's just insane. But it'll be winding by Thursday. That'll be winding down. So I will be back next Thursday for Thursday's show, which I will be doing from the hotel room again in Colorado Springs. And our guest that night will be Laura Seward-Forzik.
She's great. I love her.
Yeah, she's great. She's going to be at our. She's also going to be at our business track at ISDC, and so we're going to get a lot of Laura here real soon. Now, I can't wait. Okay, for Michael and our producer Sean, and for our guest Kuang-Han K. I am Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.